Welcome back to the Not Important Gaming Podcast with Jeremy and Derek. I am Jeremy.
I am Derek.
And we got a pretty good show here today. We actually got no Reed today.
No Reed.
Yeah, he ended up getting backed up. Wasn't able to join us tonight, unfortunately. But we do have some pretty cool stuff to talk about today. Well, I guess actually it's kind of a sad episode now that I'm looking at the topics.
Yeah, no, it is. Topics aren't really all that lighthearted. It's
yeah,
kind of depressing actually.
We're talking about Sony and their crusade against crossplay, and we're talking about the death of the Silent Hill franchise tonight. But yeah, before we get started though, what's been up with you this week, Derek?
Oh God, this week. This week's been pretty uneventful actually. But this weekend I actually had quite a bit of fun because I was able to hang out with a couple of friends that I haven't seen in a while. And then yesterday I did something that I haven't done in like a month, which is turn on my PlayStation 4. And then so I do that, and then it's like, okay, PS4 cannot start up. What the fuck? Like, it's my PlayStation 4. So I end up completely like doing a full like reinstall of the system software, like going onto their site, like, you know, with a flash drive, and like pulling their recent update off of it, and just completely starting over. So like I have to re-download everything again. I'm surprised it actually worked. Right. And then I figured out yesterday that the new SpiderMan game actually came out, SpiderMan for PS4. And I was kind of looking at some gameplay footage of it. I was like, you know what? This looks pretty decent. I'm thinking about buying it. And then probably like a couple hours after seeing like a lot of key details, I was like, okay, no, I'm definitely buying this. So for the better part of like this morning anyways, like I must have been playing it for just like 8 hours straight. Like I could not get away from it. It's a really good game.
Oh, but, yeah. No, so, I've been playing it a little bit too. I really like it, although the graphical downgrades are definitely noticeable. That was my big takeaway.
Oh my God, did you see the textures? Like, yeah, when you're like trying to and you collect the backpacks and stuff around the city, and you'll see the things like I guess the collectibles. When you focus in on it, it's like they're not rendered for like the first 10 seconds, so it just looks like grainy shit until it actually does. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
No, I remember the thing that really freaks me out is everybody in the game looks like they're made of rubber. So like I remember there was a point in time where Mary Jane like she smiles at Peter, like it zooms in our face. She straight up looked like Gollum. It freaked me the hell out.
Yeah, no, yesterday I was just I think I was like I was actually in the middle of a story mission, and I was like swinging directly kind of into this building, trying to land on the wall to like, you know, start running up it. Yeah. And I went through the wall and went just straight down into the map and just like fell forever.
Oh, that's amazing. Like, I love when things like that happen.
Yeah. I just went right in through the building. It was so seamless, and then just went straight down.
Yeah. But overall it's a good game. There's little nitpicks, but I mean
oh yeah, for sure. That's just funny stuff I found about it.
Yeah. Myself, on the other hand, I've just been doing a lot of stuff for the podcast. Started playing Dark Souls 3, which actually we have on screen right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, it's been a really long time since I've played this, so it's really cool.
How are you liking 3?
I really like it. I mean, the first time around when I played it, I had somebody carry me through it. Honestly, so like a lot of the gameplay that you're seeing is really bad. I swear to God that I'm actually good at Dark Souls 1, but I am fucking terrible at Dark Souls 3, evidently. But yeah,
Dark Souls 3 was my introduction into that franchise, so it was pretty bad. Like I had a pretty hard learning curve learning how to play that game.
Anyway, you wanna get right into it then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about Sony first. So
Ugh.
yeah, wow. I think it was, what was it, E3 was when it kind of came out that Sony was not going to be involved in the Fortnite crossplay deal that's been the Nintendo users, PC users, and Xbox users, and I think even mobile phone users are getting to enjoy. And at that point, there was a huge uproar about it, which came as kind of an interesting contrast compared to the fact that a lot of people would consider Sony to have won quote unquote E3 despite that. But yeah, no, it became this whole thing, and it's kind of spiraled out of control from there, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so when I initially heard the whole thing that was going on with Fortnite, it kind of took me by surprise because I knew that Nintendo and Microsoft were working closely together to allow crossplay to happen. Like, they seem to be able to agree on crossplay for non-exclusive titles, and I think they're just waiting on Sony at this point. And that's kind of the thing. Sony for this decision on basically not budging for allowing it, but there's a lot of details that go into it. So essentially, Sony's new CEO, Kenichiro Yoshida, I guess is his name, recently made some pretty controversial statements about crossplay.
Oh boy, yeah, no, I remember you showing me those.
yeah, no, Sony, they're more or less locking PS4 players out of their Fortnite accounts when attempting to play on Switch and Xbox One. You can still play on PC between PC and PS4, but that's the only cross-play that accessibility that Sony is wanting to offer, because, and I think for a number of reasons, but I guess their CEO recently made a statement that he said, and this was like at some convention in Berlin, I believe, but he said, on cross platforms, our way of thinking is always that PlayStation is the best place to play. Fortnite, I believe, partnered with PlayStation 4 is the best experience for users. That's our belief. And just in that statement itself, I can already just like see that for the bullshit that it is. Like, nobody, even hardcore PlayStation 4 fans would never be able to believe that PlayStation 4 is going to be better than PC in terms of being able to play any MOBA, but just even games in general. There's from a purely hardware point of view, but just overall, like, who would think that PlayStation 4 would be the best experience for any game over PC? You know what I mean? But so I think that's kind of just lip service that obviously the CEO of Sony would was kind of paying to this whole ordeal.
Yeah, he's gonna jerk off his own console. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, a number of people have come out against this, obviously, and denounced it. Like Xbox engineering lead Mike Ybarra said on Twitter that Sony still isn't listening to gamers about the crossplay situation. There was the whole thing about Todd Howard making his public statement criticizing Sony as well for a similar issue with, I think it was the mod service the modding thing for Fallout 4. I want to say it was Fallout 4, either Fallout 4 or Skyrim, and Sony's unwillingness to kind of be part of that, to open themselves up to allowing free mods on their console. So there's been a whole load of shit. But yeah, like, he's made quite a bit of statements at this point about like why exactly they take the stance as a company about crossplay, but I think it was pretty damning because a former Sony developer, John Smedley, he tweeted a pretty direct reasoning for it, stating, this is a guy who was on the inside of Sony, because he was told, like, well, and he put out this tweet, but he said, by the way, when I was at Sony, the reason stated internally for this was money. That they didn't want someone buying something on an Xbox and it being used on a PlayStation. Simple as that, dumb reason, but there it is, end quote. And I think that's kind of like, so when you hear all the kind of lip service that's, that they're giving, on the official, kind of like in the officiality of it all, like it's not, take that with a grain of salt, because I think anybody that's truly thinking about why they would not want to open themselves up to like partnering with Microsoft and Nintendo and PC and iOS when they're all kind of working together to just allow their players to share their accounts and play with their friends across, all these really popular games that Sony is the only one that wants to play by themselves. Like this is obviously just for money.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I really don't think there's any other way to dice it.
I mean, I understand it to a certain degree. I mean, when you're a company, especially a company that large, you do have to be looking at after your bottom line all the time. But I don't see how preventing or not allowing crossplay is going to benefit you in the long run. In the short run, absolutely, because you're basically ensuring that people have to. You're ensuring that people have to buy your console to play with their friends. You're ensuring that more PS4s are going to get sold in the short term. But
yeah,
I mean, you've got to think about what that's going to do to your customer base in the long run when people start, last console generation. Sure, Sony had some great games, but they were they were real shitty to their customers, and they tried to trap us into only playing Sony games and try to trap their fans into only playing on Sony consoles. And I don't know. I guess I don't see what their end game is here, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think there's a train of thought, like just kind of going off of that point, there is a train of thought that since Sony is, that they're still leading console sales, like they are, like with the PS4 selling, I think it's roughly like almost 80 million units last time I checked, but that in the PS4 consistently outsells the Xbox One in North America, that this makes for a good argument on their end as to why they would restrict their players to only playing titles on their console. But in the aftermath of like this whole thing going down, especially with like the Fortnite news, like Sony's stock price also went down when their CEO made this statement, like hinting that maybe this is kind of an issue that they're going to want to start being flexible on going forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
because I think there's like, the consumers are only going to tolerate this, for a short period of time. Like I think, kind of like you said, like this isn't a good long-term goal for them, because as all of their competitors are opening up their markets to make, or are kind of opening themselves up to making this market more free, for people to be able to buy a game here or there and to play it. Well, and also like, let's not kid ourselves, like Fortnite is free to play. Like at least the thing that everybody is wanting to play out of Fortnite is free to play, which is the PvP. So it's like, Sony isn't really missing out on much money. I mean, sure, they may not be getting the full play time, out of, their consumers with Fortnite, at every given point in time. Because, somebody who has a Fortnite account, on their PS4, may want to play on PC later, or they may want to, which they give access to, but that's the only thing they give access to. And it's just kind of like, I guess I just don't see the bigger picture as to why they're not wanting to budge on this, when it seems like it's the kind of thing that inevitably they're going to end up having.
Right. I don't know. It's difficult to really look at that and see what they're thinking. It really is a baffling state of affairs, and I'm wondering how they're going to continue this. Moving forward, because they're catching a ton of flack, and it seems like they're pulling the EA defense, and oh my god, I'm talking about EA again. Where they're basically saying, well, you don't know what you want, we know what you want, so shut up and play our games. And it's not as bad as EA, obviously, but it's still rough. It's still, they're not approaching it from a consumer-friendly position.
No, absolutely not. I mean, they're just kind of they're doing what they think is going to be most competitive for them now, since they're still kind of leading the market, the console market in terms of total sales.
Yeah,
they're wanting to kind of like hold on with an iron fist, or rule with an iron fist, and not allow Microsoft to be making money off of what they consider to be their fans, even though I really don't believe that there's any console loyalty for them to really gain out of this,
Yeah. I don't know. It's difficult to see where exactly they're going with this. Like you said, maybe. I mean, and this is the only thing I can think of is they're just being short-sighted about it. It really is a kind of an enigma, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean that's how it hits me, anyways. Yeah, it's definitely that, it's a short-sightedness issue. Because this isn't the first time that they've done this. Like, again, like Todd Howard already went through this with them, Bethesda, earlier. I want to say last year. I want to say it was last year, wasn't it? About the Fallout 4.
I believe so.
Skyrim situation.
Hold
yeah.
on.
Because like he publicly criticized them for it. Like it was pretty big, and he definitely pointed the finger and it's like, no, this is Sony. Like Microsoft is willing to work with us and like allowing, and that's the reason why even still, there's really no mod restrictions for Xbox One players who play Skyrim, but for PlayStation 4 users, it's like, I'm pretty sure there's just the what is it called? The paid mods.
Yep, the premium mods. I can't remember what the system is called. It's a dumb system and I hate it.
Yeah, I know.
But it does look like you actually can get mods for Skyrim and Fallout 4 on PS4 now. I can't find anything about them having to fight for it, but I do vaguely remember that being an issue back then, like you said.
Yeah, well, because when did he make that statement though? Because it wasn't that long ago that he actually he was publicly criticizing Todd Howard was PS4 or Sony for doing that.
For Skyrim Switch.
I think he said it. Yeah, he said they're not helpful. Oh, with Fallout 76, that's what it is.
For Fallout 76, I'm definitely looking in the wrong place.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, no crossplay.
But I think
no cross-console play.
Oh yes, yes. I do remember that. This is the thing. I don't think that they're going to be able to hold on to this position forever. What I think is going to happen is they're going to hold on to this for a while. This will probably go on for a couple of years, maximum like 2 years. During that time, they're going to be receiving a ton of pressure from their shareholders and gamers alike, saying, hey, we want crossplay. Every other company is letting us do it, and I mean just the sheer amount of bans that Nintendo and Microsoft are putting forward about this, like, I have no doubt in my mind that eventually they're going to come around and Sony is going to allow crossplay, but it is going to be like pulling teeth before we're able to actually get it.
Well, and I mean, geez, I would hope that there would already be some, pressure kind of like on their investors just in general, because like, I mean, they, I want to say when Fox, I want to say it was like Fox Business or something. I don't know why they covered this, but they were talking about the Sony stock price kind of, relative to this whole thing that was going on with Fortnite. And I mean, I think it's important also to mention that this whole thing kind of catalyzed out of the backlash of them not willing to be super, open about crossplay with Fortnite to the other consoles. They weren't really like, I didn't really remember this kind of reaction with the whole Todd Howard thing in Fallout 76. Like there was definitely some bit of news about that I remember hearing, but it was more about like Todd Howard's statement on the whole thing. Like I can't remember this actually being a big story because of that, but I mean, take the biggest game that's going on right now, Fortnite, and that's kind of what it'll take to put Sony's feet under fire for this. Is just kind of like, yeah, I mean, when they're, when they weren't willing to do this for, like Rocket League or like, Minecraft or whatever.
I forgot.
It's like that's one thing.
I totally forgot that they put up a fight with Rocket League as well.
Yeah, no, it's just, they have a history of this, but I think it took Fortnite for this to actually become like big news, big enough that now their CEO is having to make direct statements about it, and as to why they're not, opening themselves up to partnering with Microsoft and Nintendo when they are willing to open up, themselves to allowing cross-play across other consoles as well, even their own competitors. So. Yeah, it's just it's a really tricky thing, but yeah, I kind of share your sentiments. I think that they can only keep this up for so long.
Do we have any of those direct quotes from those tweets from the CEO? Because I remember they were very condescending, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the ones that are official, I want to say, came from. Yeah, Kenichiro Yoshida, their new acting CEO. Because I remember actually last year there was a different CEO. Just as of last year, he was. I remember seeing a different guy at E3. I thought that he was still their CEO, but apparently this is somebody completely different. So I don't know if they've been if they just went through a process of having somebody new come in.
Yeah, it looks like as of 2018, Kenichiro Yoshida is the new CEO.
Gotcha.
See if I can figure out who the previous one was.
Yeah, because this whole thing is just kind of like, at least with, with regards to what he said, I want to say most of what he said actually did come out of Twitter. I want to say he said it at, I know he said most of the stuff that he said recently that kind of got him under fire. That was said in Berlin when he was, I want to say it was some conference in Berlin. I forgot what it was called. It was like IPA or something like that. IFA.
I'm not sure. I know the previous CEO was Kazuo Hirai, and he handed off to Yoshida here. And actually trying to pull up the tweets from.
There's one thing I will say. I think, yeah, there was something I was looking at last week. It's actually a ex-CEO Has Harai. This is actually kind of funny. He's there's apparently a pretty popular parody account for an ex-CEO of Sony, and of course this is not official at all. It's a parody account, and there was definitely some stuff on crossplay coming out of this account on Twitter. So I think it was just kind of it caught a lot of people off guard because they were like, wait, is this real or not? But Has Harai, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that was ever somebody that was a CEO under Sony, because he went by a different name.
Yeah, here we go. I got some of the tweets, and this is not entirely related, but just so you guys can get a tone for Kenichiro Yoshida's Twitter feed. His most recent tweet from September 4th is, "This week, PlayStation gamers will get the exclusive #SpiderMan PS4, while Xbox owners will get exclusive cobwebs inside their consoles." As a fan of bans and hot takes, I'm a fan of this tweet just because that's some good shit talking there, but it kind of gives you an idea of how this guy operates and how he deals with this competition. But it's tweets like this that really kind of annoy me. Things like, "You've been asking for #crossplay, and I'm here to deliver. I'm extremely proud to announce Final Fantasy XIV players have always been able to play between PS4 and PC.
And even then, that's
it's just
that was like, yeah, like no, Final Fantasy 14, like I played that since launch, and that was never like even a thing in their mind. Like they were opening up the game to PS4 and PC like from the get-go. You know, it was just like this isn't like an important statement to make. Like I wouldn't use that as a way to pat themselves on the back, because like they also said something similar about like, oh well, you know, you guys are talking about we weren't allowing for crossplay, but you know, we allowed PS4 and PS4 Pro players to play together. I'm like,
yeah, that was the other one that he has in more hashtag crossplay news. We're also very excited to allow PS4 and PS4 Pro players to play at Destiny the Game, hashtag Forsaken, together, allowing immersive fireteam action unparalleled on Nintendo Switch. It's like, dude, right now you should not be attacking other consoles who are offering more playability and more function than your console. That's you should be,
you know,
if you're not going to allow crossplay, you should be focusing on justifying why you're not going to be allowing crossplay, rather than trying to throw shade on companies that are allowing crossplay.
Yeah, no, and you know, the more that I read the tweets from this guy, I'm thinking that this is a parody account as well. This would have to be. Like, this could not be like the official mouthpiece of an acting CEO. This is just hilarious.
Is it? I'm not seeing. I guess you're right. I'm not seeing a check mark here on Twitter, so it might not be verified. But I mean, it goes.
Yeah,
back,
no, because
it goes back pretty far though, and not a lot of these are. Not a lot of these are like funny though. A lot of them are actual advertisements for like normal stuff, like May 15th. With the feedback from PS4 Pro, we've learned a lot about consumer needs. That's why we plan on announcing the PS4 Pro Plus at E3 2018. Dedicated 4K Blu-ray and no streaming apps.
No, but he's just he dunked on No Man's Sky with this like new update. Said continue to experience the universe of No Man's Sky alone. Before because of a lack of multiplayer, now because of a lack of players. This is so bad.
Oh,
so I'm happy to announce it. Yeah.
Wait, no. The more I look at this, actually, I think you're right. I think this is a parody account, because now I'm seeing things.
It's crazy though, because there's a number of parody accounts related to Sony CEOs or like former CEOs. Like that's something that I'm kind of understanding weird. Now. Yeah.
Is this just like a? Yeah, no. Here's another one. Here's a list of games we will probably be announcing at E3 2018 this summer. Sonic Adventure 3, My Name is Mayo, the prequel, Sonic Adventure 4, Life of Black Tiger 2, Street Fighter 2, Half-Life 2.8, Final Mix Dream Drop
Full House Tournament fight. Oh god.
So yeah, maybe. Oh man, I don't know that I can't find this changes quite a bit. I guess maybe he's not talking all that shit. But whoever made these Twitters is absolutely hilarious, though.
Well, and better yet, I mean, I would like if the CEO were actually like this. If this is what
if he's
his real thoughts were, I would respect him a lot more.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, at least he's got the balls to be like, yep, nope, everything else sucks. We're the best.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, when you take the stance that you do about crossplay, you know, and you say the things that you did, you know, what was that, like last week or like 2 weeks ago when he was in Europe on this conference, the IFA or something like that, which I guess is some big gaming conference that they have in Berlin. You know, he was stating these things about how they were like at the moment just completely unwilling to budge on this whole issue, and that, you know, in the future, like they'll get back to it, addressing whether or not they want to, you know, be more open to allowing crossplay with the other consoles. But for right now, you know, they don't think that this is a good decision for them personally. And I think a lot of that is just fueled by money. It's fueled by the fact that they're still leading the game or the console market in terms of total sales and units sold, at least in North America. and well, definitely in Japan, if not North America, but just overall. And so I guess they're just trying to kind of hold on to the idea of like maybe having a monopoly over like the decisions that their players, that their consumers get to have. But I think all that does in the end, and the reason why I oppose it so much, is because like we should be above this. Like as an industry, like we should be above this. We're not talking about, I'm not asking them, and nobody's asking them to like open themselves up, from, exclusive titles and stuff like that. Like, Sony, if you really want to go, that far, Sony's probably the biggest, or not Sony, but Nintendo is probably the biggest offender of that, because, they're all about exclusives. They've held the same franchises, for the better part of like 30 plus years, and they've been doing them well, Mario and Zelda and Metroid.
Yeah, Lord knows
nobody's asking them.
Lord knows how protective they are of their copyrights too. Like, geez, I remember they tried to take down videos on YouTube that had Nintendo games on them.
Mm-hmm.
And even Nintendo now is allowing crossplay for games like Fortnite. Like, there's no justification.
Nintendo has been notoriously like aggressive about kind of getting into this whole thing with like people taking their content, and we did that was part of our topic the other week, was talking about how aggressive they were, and like getting rid of these ROM sites who were hosting some of their copyrighted content. It's just like, obviously there's that, there's like being aggressive at towards something that it could be considered somebody stealing content away from you. But then at the same time, it's like, when you really think about what's going on here right now with this whole crossplay situation, that's just you not wanting to play ball. Like that's just not what you're not wanting to share the ball with everybody else.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of like, I see Sony kind of back off into their own corner, kind of like, subjecting, their players to having to play alone as well, when everybody over there is like having fun together and able to play together, even though like, there's like opposite sides going on over there as well. Like Microsoft and Nintendo, are competing for sales as well, within the games that, they share. But it's like, they're willing to do this. They're willing to come to the table and actually, do crossplay together. And I just, when I tend to think of this, I'm just like, nobody really wins out of this, because this isn't something that Sony's going to be able to keep up long term. And right now, like it's affecting their own players. Like if you have friends that are playing on different consoles, you can't play Fortnite. You can't play, Rocket League with them or whatever. And it's like, and this is going to continue to go on until Sony finally wisens up about it. So I don't know. I see it as something that's kind of inevitably going to crash eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, and I know I've already said this, but it feels like they're under the impression that they're going to be holding the reins forever, which they're not. There is going to come a point in time where they're going to be losing the console wars, and at that point in time, this is all going to come back and it's going to bite them in the ass. People are going to remember that they were the ones who were dragging their asses on crossplay, and that they were the ones who fought people tooth and nail and were calling people names for not wanting to be involved in, or for wanting crossplay. So I mean, this is good. This is absolutely going to come back to bite them in the ass, which is unfortunate. I would like to see them, turn this around. I'd like to see them come out on top with this, but the way they're acting right now, I have a hard time seeing that happen.
Right. Yeah, and just I guess as a final note on this, keep in mind too that Sony, even though they're leading console sales right now with the PS4, over the Xbox One, it hadn't always been the case. Like last gen, Xbox was leading. Like, I remember when that was the case too. It was around like 2000, 2008, 2009. Like there were more Xbox units sold in North America than there was at PlayStation 4, like, or PlayStation 3. Everybody wanted to play on a 360, you know, and that was where, you know, most of the playtime in North America was coming out of, you know, when it related to consoles. So it's like, you know, Sony holding the reins is a relatively new thing, you know, or at least that, you know, they just got their mantle back, you know what I mean? Like, so, but I can't remember, and that was even when they didn't offer like a or they didn't require like a paid subscription service to have access to their online servers for you to play your games, whereas Microsoft did. So it's like you had to pay $50 to $60 a year, you know, if you had an Xbox 360 to play with your friends, whereas you didn't have to pay anything to play with your friends on the PlayStation 3, and the Xbox 360 still outsold the PlayStation 3. And even then, you know, Microsoft, they weren't making these kind of decisions about crossplay, you know, back then, just only restricting, you know, themselves to that. Well, then again, I guess at the same time, you know, they're probably, well, I think actually last gen was different about crossplay, because I think it was the case where certain games allowed you to play PC and Xbox and PS4 and PC, but
yeah, there were very specific games, typically MMOs.
Yeah, no, maybe that was different last gen, but no, it just in just terms of like in terms of like Sony's kind of ego about this, like, you know, the fact that they have not always kind of been on top, you know, over Microsoft, you know, it's just like, I don't know why they're deciding to be so, you know, just so pushy about this anyway, about not wanting to budge. So it's just, I don't know.
And like I said, the only thing they chalk it up to is they're under the impression that they are going to be on top forever. Which is absolutely not going to be the case. Yeah,
so I guess we'll see where it goes. But
fingers crossed that they wisen up. But you know, no promises as far as anything.
Yeah.
All right. I think we'll go ahead and move on to our other topic. Actually, they are kind of sort of related, since, you know, PlayStation is kind of relying on their exclusives. The current developer of Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima, I kind of wanted to talk about Silent Hills, and really the entire Silent Hill franchise, which was part of what got him canned from Konami. So I guess when you're talking about Silent Hill, it's kind of best to start kind of at the beginning, where Silent Hill came from. And Silent Hill, when it first came out back in 1999, the team that made it, Team Silent, they were kind of they were all developers from other failed projects. And Silent Hill was kind of their last chance to make a game before they were going to be before they were all going to be fired from Konami. They were basically told, "You're going to make a good game, or you're fucking gone." So they got together and they made this game that kickstarted a pretty major franchise for from '99 at least up until 2004, and the franchise continued up until 2012 when they made Silent Hill. It was kind of, I don't know if it was the first major survival horror game, or if that title goes to Resident Evil. Actually, let me just pull up Resident Evil real quick.
Both started in the PS1 era.
Yes, they did. It'd be Resident Evil. Resident Evil came out in '96. But I mean, what kind of differentiated Silent Hill from Resident Evil was that where Resident Evil, you were playing, you know, this big action star character, like there were like a lot of them were cops. And it was very Hollywood budget kind of horror. Well, it's not Hollywood budget, but Hollywood movie style of horror.
Yeah.
Silent Hill kind of focused more on being an atmospheric adventure with, kind of everyman protagonists. To this day, the protagonist of Silent Hill 2, James Sunderland, is one of the most popular. Is one of the most popular protagonists in gaming, or at least in PS1 gamings. And he wasn't a soldier. He wasn't like he was just a guy who was trying to find his wife in the city, his dead wife. The game's weird like that.
Yeah.
But just this whole it really built itself off of psychological horror and symbolism, as opposed to like I was saying before, like blockbuster scares, explosions, giant monsters. That wasn't really a thing that happened in Silent Hill. It was very intimate, which it kind of had to be, just because of the budget they were working with. Like I remember actually, I read that the fog, which is something that Silent Hill is known for, was actually that was because of a graphical limitation. Basically, they could only render out so far. So instead of basically forcing you to have to deal with constant pop-ins, they put a fog in place to kind of create it. It helped in creating an atmosphere, and at the same time, it hid their horrible low draw distances.
It's a pretty smart move, actually.
It was a very smart move.
Back then, yeah.
And it became like just a part of the franchise. And they had a series of very successful games, from Silent Hill in 1999 all the way up until Silent Hill 4: The Room 2004. That was kind of the heyday for Silent Hill, and things started going downhill around the time that Silent Hill Origins came out, where it almost seems like the developers kind of forgot. Well, they brought in a lot of junior developers, people who weren't involved with the original project, and a lot of people who didn't really understand what made Silent Hill. It almost felt like. And it started with Origins, and it got really bad at Homecoming in 2008, where the game was very action focused, and then that continued all the way up until Downpour in 2012. So fast forward from 2012 all the way up to, I believe it was 2014. Yep. And out of nowhere, this game that nobody had heard of before, from a developer that nobody had heard of, called PT, just showed up on the Sony marketplace, the PlayStation marketplace, and it was this like kind of haunted house style horror game. You walked around basically like one room or two rooms, trying to solve puzzles while you're being stalked by this ghost, and it was this very intense atmosphere that had a lot of puzzle, or a specific puzzle to get to the end of the game, which revealed, I believe it was after 4 days, somebody had solved this puzzle that Hideo Kojima, it turned out, was involved with. And it created, and it's funny, I believe he stated that he expected it to be like a good couple of months before anybody figured it out, but people had it figured out within days. And at the end of the puzzle, we were treated with a very, very brief trailer for a new Silent Hill game called Silent Hills. Now we're kind of getting into recent memory, which is where Hideo Kojima was actually fired. The Silent Hill project was scrapped, and the game basically was the franchise was functionally shut down.
Right.
Seemingly for good this time. And that's more or less current day. I guess it's also worth noting that a lot of people that worked on PT ended up moving on to Resident Evil 7. And that game turned out fantastic. It was very clearly inspired by PT. But I guess...
it was definitely a different feel from the Resident Evil at the time. I can't really say that I was that big of a fan of it, but I definitely get why people did like it. I guess it just personally wasn't my taste.
Fair enough. I guess being like, I mean, that was kind of my thing back then. I loved classic survival horror games. And that was like the big thing about Resident Evil 7 that I appreciated, was it stepped away from what Resident Evil had become, which was this big, like, even more of a blockbuster Hollywood type game than it had been in the past. And it stepped into this territory of like going back to its roots of being a puzzle-based game where there was, like, I mean, there are still large set pieces. There's some crazy stuff that happens in Resident Evil 7. But it was...
Yeah, I will say there was definitely some contrast for sure. Like, if you... Like, when I think back to Resident Evil 5, like, it definitely had a different feel to it entirely. It was a lot more focus on combat. And just kind of like you said, like that blockbuster feel of, like, of combat and just kind of like action star type of, game that it was, versus the, if you want to call it a psychological horror or just, just a horror game in general, that the Resident Evil series, is kind of known for. But I mean, and not to get too far off topic, but, this whole thing on Silent Hill, I think, and I was kind of reading into this, I think a lot of people were asking the same question of, like, is there any chance that, we're going to see Silent Hill kind of, make a comeback? And I think the general consensus, at least from what I've noticed on, online, at least what people had to say about the future of it, is that even if it did find a way to resurface, like, Konami would just fuck it up anyways.
Yeah, that's...
I think if they sold or if they licensed the IP, like, there might be a chance for it going forward. But, like, there's also a group of people who I think are conflicted about the future of the series, like, just from, like, a purely, like, gameplay quality perspective as well. So I think a lot of people are divided out, like, when it comes to the developers that have worked on the Silent Hill series. Like, with a fair number of people, I mean, they were trashing a lot of the games that came out after Team Silent had stopped. I think Team Silent ended up leaving after, I want to say, Silent Hill 4.
Yes,
is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's like, and a lot of people are just kind of like, well, the future of the games, when they were still running, ended up just kind of deteriorating over time. So even if it weren't a matter of, like, leasing out the IP to somebody else to do it right, it's like, I think it just kind of left a bad taste in everybody's mouth around, like, 2012 or whatever, when, like, saw the last game out.
Yeah,
I can't remember which one that was. Was it?
That was Silent Hill Downpour.
Memories.
There was also Book of Memories, but the last, like, mainstay title in the series was Downpour, which
Gotcha.
was, I mean, it was everything that was wrong with Silent Hill Homecoming, but in a worse put together package. That was the thing. At least you could say that Silent Hill Homecoming was a good game if it wasn't a good Silent Hill, or even a good horror game. It was at least a good action game. But Downpour took everything that did and made it worse. Which is interesting, because at that point in time, especially around 2012, is when we saw, like, kind of the rise. I mean, horror games in the AAA market were starting to die off. But the indie market was really starting to pick up in terms of horror games. I mean, at that point in time, we had things like, what was it, SlenderMan came out at that point in time. Yeah. Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, that was when we really started seeing this resurgence in horror from the indie market.
And those two were pretty popular, especially Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, SlenderMan got so popular. It actually, I mean, they just had a movie that came out. It wasn't a good movie, mind you, but it was a movie.
SlenderMan got so popular that there ended up becoming a story of these girls chopping up their friend in the forest.
Yep, a true story.
I was
actually,
joking about that.
It's really messed up. That's actually the base idea that the movie is based off of. Actually.
Yeah. No, that was. I just remember when I heard that, I was like, Jesus Christ, dude, people are willing to take like pop culture that far.
Yeah, no. Like every once in a while, I'm like, man, I think I got too carried away with whatever it is I'm doing. Like I always talk about like getting into cosplay, and like, man, maybe that's getting too carried away. And then I remember people murder each other over games sometimes. Like,
and then you're like, you know what, cosplay is just fine.
Cosplay's all right. I think I could live with it. Oh man. But yeah, so it was, I mean, I don't know. I found it very interesting that we saw AAA kind of shy away from. Amnesia. That was the other one that I couldn't think of the name of. That was the other really big indie horror title that came out around that time. But I really think, I mean, ultimately, I mean, kind of the main point with bringing up PT is I think that I really think that Konami missed out on a chance to be the big ones to bring horror back, because I mean now we're seeing, because of Resident Evil 7's success, we're seeing now a second remake from Capcom. They're now remaking Resident Evil 2, which looks fantastic. Following the wake of, like I said, Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
And then you look at these indie teams that are kind of going from single A to double A. Like the guy who worked on Amnesia, is it a guy or is it multiple? I think it's a team actually. I mean, they fairly recently released Soma. I want to say a couple of years ago they released that, and that was also like this huge low budget horror game. And then obviously there's Outlast 2. I mean, a ton of people love that. I still need to give that one a try. I don't know. It just seems like Silent Hills had an opportunity to be like a driving force in what is seeming to be kind of the resurgence of horror games.
No, it definitely did. I mean, it was, and that's why, honestly, I was kind of surprised that they didn't end up following through with releasing it. Like, I want to say it was like, what's it, back in 2015 when they confirmed that they were going to cancel it?
Yes, I believe it was 20. Oh, hold on, actually, I've got it right here. Yes, it was April 27th, 2015. They officially confirmed that Silent Hills was canceled. And then,
because I just remember, like, everybody was excited about, like, what was it? Norman Reedus was featured in it.
Yep.
Guillermo del Toro, famous Hollywood director. There's it's just like, you know, it seemed like there was a lot of promise for it, and man, I remember at least when I say it was a press conference that it might have been like the year before, but I remember like when Sony revealed it, it was like, oh man, it had been downloaded like 1 million times. Like this, shit, what am I thinking back to? I can't remember if it was the most recent, well, at the time, the latest trailer that they had, but I remember there was like one trailer specifically, there was one video specifically I remember watching that like everybody just loved, and there was like a lot of talk about it then, but I can't remember. I think once they canceled it in 2015, and I didn't really hear any more news about it, so I don't know if, like, in fact, when they did cancel it, I didn't even know they'd canceled it until like much later on. Like, I ended up hearing the news kind of like secondhand from somebody else that they weren't going to follow through with it, because I was always kind of like wondering, I was like, that game with Norman Reedus like never got made. They were like, oh yeah, no, Konami just completely scrapped it. I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah, they completely scrapped it, and then to kind of add insult to injury, they actually ended up making a pachinko slot machine, because that's kind of what they dropped gaming for, because that's the thing. What Konami had done is basically they just said they're not making games anymore. They made one more game after Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. They made Metal Gear Survive, which did horribly, justifiably so. Man, that's a whole nother rant that I am not ready to have right now. But you want to talk about games that make me genuinely angry?
Yeah.
Bring up Metal Gear Survive. But just it was just adding insult to injury. They with their new line of pachinko slots that they were releasing, they made a Silent Hill 2 pachinko slot, and they made a Metal Gear Solid 3 pachinko slot, which are the two most beloved titles in both of those franchises. And it was, because especially the way they had announced Metal Gear Solid 3, they basically made it sound like it was going to be a remastering of Metal Gear Solid 3, which it absolutely was not.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe they did something similar with Silent Hill 2.
And just looking at the reviews for Metal Gear Survive, it's just like, holy shit, this game just got trashed.
They did some horrible stuff. I remember they were charging people for save slots.
What?
Yeah, no, it was, like I said, there is a reason that game like genuinely triggers me.
Where's my wallet?
Because what they did was basically there was a like you would get one save slot when you started the game up. But if you wanted more, I believe it was $10 for a save slot.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, it was the most obvious attempt to wallet gouge I've ever seen in my entire life.
Who even thinks of that? Like, as a genuine idea, like when they're talking to like the board of directors and like trying to come to this decision, like who thinks of that? Like that's the kind of decision that, like, if I were surrounded by like a team of people like coming up with major decisions about the game at the time, and somebody proposed that, I would look at them stupid, and then I'd probably fire them if I had the means to do so.
It comes down to the fact that I don't think Konami has the degree of respect for their consumer base that a lot of other companies do. And just the fact, the entire way they handled both that and the pachinko slots, I think really shows that they're willing to do whatever it takes to squeeze every last dime out of the franchises that people love before they leave them dead on the side of the road, basically. Yeah, it was a mess. Jeez. But ultimately, I guess what we learned from the whole incident was, there are still major developers who are interested in working on these things. Now that Kojima has been let go, he started working on, like I said, he started working on Death Stranding, which has everyone who was involved with, well, I guess not the minor developers, but it has all of the major individuals, including Norman Reedus and Guillermo del Toro. They're involved in the development of Death Stranding, which looks like a horror game, maybe. Well, it certainly has horror elements if it is not a horror game.
Yeah.
I guess that's the big confusing part, is nobody's really sure what Death Stranding is. It certainly looks interesting. I don't know. Have you seen any of the trailers for it?
Death Stranding.
Yes.
I'm gonna probably let me look up a trailer for it just to refamiliarize myself if I haven't seen it. Because like the name pokes out at me, but like I can't.
Well, probably because I talk about it nonstop outside of the podcast.
Let's see.
But it's
was it E3? E3 this year?
Yeah, it was at E3 this year. They actually showed gameplay, quote unquote, this year.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
But it's just this very like bizarre, interesting concept where you're the protagonist is delivering packages and things look like that post-apocalyptic almost. I don't know. It's really bizarre. But,
yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, the video on Silent Hills that I was thinking about, it wasn't the teaser trailer. It was when IGN was they were doing like gameplay of it.
It
was kind of like a it was it was the Silent Hills playable teaser walkthrough. Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean going back to that actually, like even after, because Konami did everything they could to scrub the existence of PT from the face of the earth. Because initially what they did was they how do they do this? They basically barred all further download of PT, and it was basically this thing where if you had PT, you had it, but nobody else is going to be able to get it. And that was the way it seemed for a while. And I believe it was a couple months later, people started reporting that if they had their PS4 connected to the internet, their copies of PT were being deleted off of their console without their permission.
Oh wow.
That was how dedicated Konami was to erasing the existence of this game. That they just straight up scrubbed it from the face of the planet. Now it's, let me see if I can find the price. Here we go. A Sony PlayStation 4 with Silent Hills PT right now on eBay is going for $340.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's how much a used console of the game a used console with the game on it is going for. That's how, like, they took this game that they wanted to bury and turned it into legend. And I don't know if that was their intention. I don't think that I don't think that it was their intention, but I can't be for sure. But if it wasn't, then man, did they fuck up.
Yeah, this is insane now that I'm kind of reading more on it. Yeah, they did a lot to just kind of try to forever get rid of this.
And, I mean, so there's a lot of speculation. Nobody knows for sure what happened. It's kind of broiled in the politics of Kojima getting fired, as to what exactly is going on. But the theories, and this is the theory I ascribe to, and complete disclosure before I say this, I don't have any insider knowledge. I don't know for sure. This is entirely speculation. What I think happened was, I think that Kojima went to Konami and said, I want to make a Silent Hill game. And Konami said, no, you're working on the new Metal Gear Solid game. You are already over budget. You're already scheduled to go over the initial established schedule. You need to finish this game. And I think what happened was Kojima ended up allocating some of his resources that were intended for Metal Gear Solid to make PT without Konami's knowledge. I think that's why the game was released under a different name. Now, granted, this is not the first time that Kojima's released a game under a different studio name. I believe he did something. He did do something very much like that with the announcement of Metal Gear Solid 5 as well. That he initially announced that under the name of an indie studio called Moby Dick Studios. But I think there was a different reason for that this time. I think that was honestly because he wasn't given the go-ahead. And I think after Konami found out about this, instead of what he believed was going to happen, which is them say, wow, this is a really positive reaction to this, maybe we can make this game, I think instead what happened was they were angry at him for allocating these resources and fired him, and I think as a punishment they tried to scrub the game from existence as well, since it wasn't something they approved.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, if that were the case, that'd be crazy. I'm reading right here. It says, following the cancellation of Silent Hills, Kojima announced he was officially retiring from horror games. The designer said that he scares easily and admitted that his previous work in the horror genre was affecting him personally and giving him bad dreams.
Which is funny.
I don't know, when I read that, it seems like such a weird thing for somebody to say who worked on something that ended up, becoming as popular as this.
Well, it's funny because
in short life.
In a more recent interview, I remember him actually saying that he doesn't like working on horror games, but he also thinks that because he is in his own words a scaredy cat, that allows him to create games from a perspective that only somebody who is easily frightened can create.
Okay.
Or at least that's what I had heard. And that's why I believe we're seeing a lot of horror. I mean, we're seeing a lot of horror influence in PT, or excuse me, not in PT, in Death Stranding.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly a different kind of horror from Silent Hill. It's on a much grander scale. But you can see kind of like when you watch trailers, you could see the same basic ideas of like cosmic horror showing through, of things that are beyond human comprehension, which seems to me to be a major theme. At least just from my perspective, kind of sitting back and watching all these trailers. I believe that cosmic horror is going to play a big role in it. And I don't know, who knows, it could be completely different. I mean, just in general, like the big statement that he made was that I keep doing that, Death Stranding is going to be different from any other game you've ever played. I believe he even went as far as to say that this is actually a different genre, like this genre doesn't exist yet. So I don't know what that means, but it certainly has me interested. And as I said before, Kojima is like a huge, like my favorite, my favorite developer, my favorite director in gaming.
Yeah, we really didn't get a release date on Death Stranding from E3, but I don't know, man. Like I'm kind of excited about it. I mean, I remember like when I watched the trailer for it, it was just kind of like, I don't know, like it kind of poked out to me as it kind of like a almost like a reattempt at what they were trying to do before. With Silent Hills. Like I think there was a number of people that tried to draw parallels between those two. They were thinking that there's honestly I think there's some people who think that Death Stranding, it has kind of like bits of PT in it, just in general. Like the game itself is not entirely dead, or the popularity of it kind of like carried on, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now with Death Stranding, is because, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like it seems like it's kind of like a reinsurgence of what was canceled before.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that theory. I mean, I've heard some people say that they believe. I mean, this is the thing. Like, there's a common thread. Only a lot of people think that Kojima is like this master. Like, he's playing 4D chess like all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think, and like he had this planned out at the beginning. He knew he was gonna get fired, and PT wasn't actually a trailer for Silent Hill. It was a trailer for Death Stranding. I don't think he was. I think that people are giving him more credit than he's due in terms of that. I don't think that. I think that he's very good at recovering. I think he's very good at with something, making the best of a bad situation.
Right.
And I think that's what Death Stranding is. I think there were a lot of people who were really upset because they weren't going to be able to work on this game. Guillermo del Toro in particular, I remember he took the cancellation really hard. But was very but I remember he seemed very excited in the interview when he was showed to be back and working on the game. I think Norman Reedus also was very heartbroken when it happened. So no, I don't think that this is Silent Hill. I don't think that he had this planned out from the beginning. What I do think is that he is very, very good at landing on his feet, and when this opportunity came up, he knew who to go to kind of pick up the pieces and get the ball rolling back where it had fallen.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that would make sense, because I mean, it just, at least from what we know about Kojima, kind of has the Midas touch, when it comes to being a video game developer, and so it's not kind of too far left field to say that he could more or less take the hype at least surrounding PT and that kind of the general mood that put everybody in back in, what was it, 2014?
2014, 2015.
And kind of like bring that into 2018, like it's I'm expecting good things of it for sure.
This is the thing, if this goes well, I really, really hope that this can create kind of a resurgence of horror games. I mean, we're already starting to see the cusp of it. It's starting to kind of happen, where horror games are coming back. And that is thanks in part to the indie market, like I was mentioning before, games like Outlast, and Amnesia, Soma, stuff like that. But I think now seeing the success of PT and Resident Evil 7 and presumably Resident Evil 2, I mean, based off everything I've seen with that, it looks like it's going to be an excellent game. I really think we're starting to see horror games kind of come back with a vengeance, which is great because I love horror games. I mean, it's my favorite genre outside of stealth games.
Yeah, it's definitely something that needs to come back. But I think there's a lot of optimism behind, the reasons as to why why it's kind of already happening. And, kind of like you pointed out, I mean, we've seen big trends with, SlenderMan and, Five Nights at Freddy's and, these big games that seem to take off. And, they're still kind of doing, an Outlast as well, and recently Outlast 2. It's, and kind of like you said, I mean, Resident Evil 7, although it wasn't, necessarily my cup of tea, it was, a critically acclaimed game at the time, and kind of still is. And, now there's, well, and I think you can honestly spin this into, kind of like another talk about like where it's going to go from here. If we can get the footing for, that genre back, then I think that will probably be the first genre to be able to really do it well in VR, when VR becomes like completely commercial. Well, much more than it already is because when you have games that are like that are just like typical typically just really good horror games, or psychological horrors, or all the different subgenres within the horror genre that those games exist in. That's like, if you can bring all of that into VR, that's probably going to be one of the major selling points to try to like continue to develop good horror games. If I had to say so myself, like there aren't many genres that I think are going to be able to do well when VR just completely takes over, but that will be one of them, I think, for sure.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
It just brings you that much closer into like kind of the cerebral aspect to it, like just the you want to feel kind of closer to the horror. You want to feel kind of like more enveloped in it, and that's it can't get any closer than VR. So but no, I mean, it just in terms of like the current climate, I think they could port it over to VR, any of these games over to VR if they wanted to. Resident Evil 7 is already being ported over to VR, right?
It already is in VR, but exclusively PlayStation.
Yeah, okay. So I just think there's optimism for Death Stranding, but just for the horror genre in general. I think the future outlook is pretty, especially if they do this well and people respond well to it, because it's going to create a demand for more. So here's to hoping. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Like you're saying with horror in VR. I mean, that's already a very successful thing, just with the few indie horror games there are. Like I remember.
Oh yeah.
What was it? I believe it was Duck Season that came out last year. That was a horror a horror VR title that was very good. There was also I believe Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades has a couple of horror game modes that were all very successful as well. I mean, there's very clear. I mean, you don't even have to put a lot of effort into horror games with VR to make them to make them good and make them scary. Now, obviously, it helps, and it's always a good thing to have like high quality whatever game you're making. But I mean, just being that close and having that level of immersion is just, it's so good for horror, which mandates a level of a level of immersion in order to work.
Well, and I think I kind of see that, like, even from somebody who doesn't own VR, like, I think even I've kind of seen that in a number of other games that otherwise, like, if they weren't VR games, if they were just like, typical like console games, or non-VR, they wouldn't be scary at all, or at least they wouldn't strike you as scary, and you definitely wouldn't really get much of like a reaction to it as a horror game. But some like really small indie games that like I've seen people play, that just it's kind of funny, because it's like, even though there's very few actually like horror game aspects to it, it's like, people were still genuinely like fearful of like playing the game. Like there was one game that I remember, like, you were just kind of sitting down at like a desk in an office, and like all of a sudden like a dinosaur would just come into the room.
Oh geez, I remember that.
Yeah, and it was just like I saw a number of YouTubers like completely break down and shit just in dealing with that. And typical like roller coaster ones, and then like
there was
the one, I think, actually, the plank on that. Yeah, we were talking about that. And so it's like games that are like are unintentionally scary just from like a VR point of view, like for some people who like get that immersed into it, or who may already have a fear of any of those things anyways. Like when they actually get a real horror game done well, ported over to VR, like it's going to be like a legit thing. Like it's going to be the real deal, and that's what I'm saying. Like I think there's a lot of promise to it, like as a genre moving into that market, but I guess I don't, maybe that will be the revival of it. If it's not done before that point by, releases such as like Death Stranding or whatever, like I think it'll definitely be repopularized as VR.
Yeah, no, I agree. And VR's already, like I said, VR's already shown itself to lend itself very well to horror as a genre, and I think here very soon we're going to see like AAA horror titles going to come back. If not AAA, then at least AA, because that's the other thing that I really like is a lot of like AA development teams are starting to come back. Like the guys who worked on Hellblade, the guys who worked on Enslaved. A lot of like really cool. I mean, just smaller teams with smaller budgets who, I mean, it's bigger than an indie team, but not as big as like a AAA team. It's very cool to see that coming back.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think along with that, we're going to see horror games come back, because I mean that really is where horror has always thrived, is in the AA industry.
Yeah, I think having a healthy budget for it's one thing. Yeah, it just needs to be directed well.
Yes, it absolutely needs to be directed well, and that's the thing. It is absolutely imperative that horror games be directed well, that they have to have the atmosphere, because without the proper atmosphere, all you have instead of a horror game is a shitty shooter or a shitty adventure game. It relies so much on being able to evoke a certain reaction from your players and from the that has to emanate from the atmosphere. I mean, there's only so much you can do, and it has to work. Otherwise, I mean, all you got is a mediocre shooter at best.
Right.
So ultimately, I mean, I'm looking forward to what we're going to see in the horror genre in the future. Actually, I think it's very fitting that I put Cry of Fear here in the gameplay. I totally forgot I had that. But this was kind of an homage to the Silent Hill franchise. Very excellent game. Anybody who has PC and who owns Half-Life 2, you should absolutely go and download Cry of Fear, because it's an excellent horror game. That while it doesn't take every note from Silent Hill, it very clearly takes inspiration, especially in the realms of, like, because Silent Hill covers a lot of mental health issues, and Cry of Fear talks about depression. A lot of the enemies are based off of depression as a concept. But this is absolutely tangential, and moving forward, well, I guess I think that's pretty much everything that we could talk about this subject.
I'm just I'm excited about it going forward. I just kind of on a final note for me, it's definitely something I'm going to be kind of following more closely into. I've really wanted to kind of break more into the horror genre than I have. My experience with horror games in general is very limited. You know, I've always been kind of more into horror movies than games, but I'm not somebody who's, you know, stayed away from the genre, you know, by any means. You know, I absolutely love thrillers like that, but it's I want to see them done well. I want to see them done right, you know, and it would be nice if there was good funding and good directing for a brand new game, you know, in this current gen, you know, and kind of like going into next gen, that I felt like really kind of measured up to you know, kind of what everybody was seeking out of you know, like PT, you know, this whole thing that's going on with Death Stranding. It looked really good. I was pretty impressed by the trailer at E3, so
yeah.
I guess we'll see. But yeah, no high hopes.
I really think, I think that Resident Evil 2 is going to be that. At least in terms of like being the game that kind of that kind of like reminds major developers of that there is a market for horror. But yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see how that horror market goes in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that's about all we got tonight. Unless you had something else you wanted to bring up.
No, not that I can think of.
All right.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, thank you very much for watching the Not Important Gaming Podcast with Jeremy and Derek. I am Jeremy.
And I am Derek.
We are here on twitch.tv/ubarlook, UBARALOOK. Again, that's twitch.tv/ubarlook, UBARALOOK. We're here every Sunday night at 11:30 Central Time.
And we promise we will drag Reed into the next one. He will be here.
Yes.
I will go hunt him down.
We will, we'll beat him if he doesn't show up. Other than that, you can also find our YouTube channel. If you look down in the description on Twitch here, just click on Doom Guy's face down there. That'll take you to our YouTube channel, where I try to upload our old episodes as soon as they come off of Twitch. So our YouTube channel is typically about 2 weeks behind, but they are much better edited, and I usually add a little bit of extra music on there to kind of fill some of the dead air when we're looking stuff up. But I think that just about does it for us. Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been Jeremy and Derek and the Not Important Gaming Podcast. Have a wonderful night.
Take care, guys.